And I believe we have a quorum. There's 6 of us at this point, and that's the entire current commission. I'm going to make one change in the agenda to move the habitat restoration program to the top after we get through the minutes, so that we have so Brian doesn't have to suffer with us all night. So we can go from there. Are there any written communications?
I do not have any written communications for the commission.
Okay, are there any other folks on the meeting?
There are no attendees currently.
Okay. I think the materials came out on Friday. The minutes are there. Does anybody have any corrections or any additions to the minutes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So be it. Let's move in before we get to the director's report. Brian has a presentation, and I think will make a lot of things very clear to us as far as where we're headed, and it's very, very exciting. So Brian, I will turn the floor over to you.
If you could please introduce Brian, because I'm not sure Travis has had a chance
Oh,
to meet
okay.
Brian yet.
Okay, Brian Ascona is the horticulturalist for the Parks Department, and is working diligently around every park, and actually puts up with us as weed warriors, and make sure that we have what we need, and tries to at some point hold us back when we get too happy with the loppers and the chainsaws. So anyway, I will turn that over to Brian.
Thanks, Jim. Before I jump into this presentation, how long should I take? When should I try to wrap this thing up?
Oh, I think by 10 would be fine.
Like 10 minutes?
No, 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
No, take what time is needed, but.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna shoot for 30 minutes. So, all right, well, let me jump. Thanks everybody for letting me come and talk about what is my favorite topic as things relate to all of it, parks and recreation. And I'm gonna share my screen here. Sorry, let me
I see you. We're seeing your screen. Yes.
Yes. Oh, there it is. All right. And I think
Brian, you can hit that little screen with the arrow on it on the upper right by from beginning. You see from beginning right above the number 10. Look at slide number 10 on the left.
okay.
And then right above that, there's a little green arrow inside the screen. Yep, there you go.
Okay. All right. That could have taken me a long time to figure out. All right. So habitat restoration. Of course, this isn't all that we do, or it's not all that I do, but it's one of my favorite things. So yes, I'm Brian Ascona, the horticulturalist. And these are some of the things I and volunteers have been working on over the last year and a half or so, or I guess coming up on 2 years. Wait, how would I move to the next slide?
I think you can click it just click the screen or click your arrow button.
Up, just click. All right, simple. Okay, so first, I think should just clarify, what we mean by restoration as it relates to Olivet parks in particular. All parks pretty much have natural areas, small natural areas within them, which are kind of ecological inheritance, but it's been modified, by the farmers, which were previously here, as well as by parks and subsequent generations, as well as by the invasive species. So the goal for restoration is to improve the habitat quality and the ecological health of these areas, and so we're not returning to something that was here before humans, but we are going to be guided by the regional ecosystems, which are woodlands and tallgrass prairies for the St. Louis region. So, some projects might try to recreate what was once there, but that would be a narrower target. And, that requires a different time scale, different resources than we have. So we're just trying to improve the habitat by promoting the local, if you will. So a big part of that is invasives removal. And that's been going on in all sorts of ways. It is going on for the Centennial Greenway. It's being done by the contractors. They're doing plenty. Weed Warriors has done a lot and continues to do stuff along the in both Warson and Stacy, as well as in other areas. We've got into some other parks as well. Jim, Ed, myself, my previous assistant, we do a lot of invasive removals on our own. We do try to coordinate that, so we're working the right areas, but that's is equal to or maybe greater than what Weed Warriors does. We've had some unexpected invasive removal by Amron's contractor that, they just did it. We didn't really, we didn't know they had a plan. And MSD has done a lot on the bike path recently, and these things just sort of come out of nowhere. We have to respond, also, it's not just honeysuckle. Creeping euonymus is a huge problem, especially in Stacy, but also Warson, also in other areas, and that's a vine which can actually take down trees, but certainly it interferes with ability to grow anything else. It has absolutely zero ecological value, so that is also a problem. And that primarily I work in myself. And it's a long process. And, if there were questions, I can go into details, but in some areas, it's really taken a year to remove it. And you have to start by targeting it, growing up trees, and then sort of work down. So it doesn't produce the same sort of biomass in terms of removing it. It's not going to be dumpsters full of material, but it is a pain, and I'm working on that too. So we have to, the idea, and what we've been doing is to replant these areas that have been, essentially cleared. And so as far as woody species go, I get seedlings like the ones that you see right there from MSD. Those only cost about 50 cents a piece. They have to be ordered and shipped, and availability can be limited. But also get free 3-gallon trees and shrubs from Forest Relief. As a park, we can get free plant material. There are advantages to using the smaller ones, actually, and of course the advantage of using a 3-gallon tree is that it's bigger. It looks like you already have something going pretty much immediately, but it's higher maintenance in terms of caring for it. So it's a trade-off, if we want something fast or we want something that I don't have to water regularly. So, but also some areas that have been planted were not previously honeysuckle. And these areas that were turf, and this is, pursuant to the master plan, remove turf, replace it with natives. It's smaller in terms of, the square footage. And I try to select those areas very thoughtfully in terms of where the turf can be removed and some native woods can be planted there. And generally, I'm trying to build out a natural area, not just randomly selecting some turf in the middle of the park, but sort of building on that natural inheritance that I was talking about. I'm going to go through challenges for all these topics, and a big challenge is basically damage to new plants. And deer do a lot, and so if you see cages on something, that's because there was a deer problem. Probably already was a problem, and I responded. I don't automatically put a cage around things because it would just require too much caging. And I think, it looks like all our trees are imprisoned, and it's a lot of metal to put in the landscape, and it's expensive, or relatively so. But there's also sometimes the cage is really to keep mowers out too, because if it's not, sometimes they can't tell. I mean, they're trying to move as fast as possible, and they can't always, see that small little tree from across the park. And watering is the constant challenge. And a newer challenge that we're doing is transplanting. And Ed's helped me a lot with this, as well as some of the other park crew. And that's just, a lot of the paths that are being put in. What we didn't know a year and a half ago exactly where these things were going, and it changes. They've got to do all the surveying and stuff. So sometimes something is coming in the way, or the path is coming or going through a place where I've already put a tree. And in most instances, we can move that. It's labor intensive, but I think we've already had some success doing these transplants, and it's just, I think it's a challenge of planting in parks where things are changing, and it's a lot of different players. It's not like a homeowner who knows what, his yard's going to look like for the next 30 years, so to speak. Anyway, those are just some of the challenges to planting. Perennials, so this would be or flowers and grasses and sedges and whatnot. We have to pretty much buy sometimes at retail or sometimes wholesale. I should try to work a little harder to get some new wholesale deals there because they're expensive. We get a little discount, but I'd like a greater discount. And those are where I plant. There is generally tends to be along paths or near the entrance to some of these natural areas. I can't plant them what I do on occasion, but it's high risk to plant them deep into the woods, so to speak, because I have to monitor them and water them regularly. So that I think the challenge with perennials, is that they're high maintenance, and that they're expensive. Seeding. This is what I'm currently working on, and I'm very excited about this development. So the seeding areas that are being restored, seeding areas that have been cleared, and seeding some of the old turf areas too. And this picture there is actually relates to the seed sources. And I had to put my dog in there because I've purchased seed from seed companies, and that is pricey. Wild, like native seeds, are expensive, in some cases close to $100 a pound. And so I do a lot of seed collection. And I do this, I don't, bring my dog to work all the time. I do this in my spare time because I love it. So that's why he comes along. And he motivates me to get out there. We've got a lot of seed from Shaw Nature Reserve, for example. And there, we have like written permission, so we can take as much as we want. But in some instances, it's informal permission. And so it's small quantities of abundant plants, from different areas. I would be comfortable, and people would get upset if I tried to collect anything that was rare, certainly nothing that was threatened. So that kind of makes it inefficient, but that's all part of the journey, I suppose. Also, moving some seed around within all of that. One of the goals is to build seed beds so we can take seed from a part of the park and put it in another, or move it to a different park. And that, in the long term, we'll be growing our own seed, because we'll know that it works in all of it. But especially in the near term, we have to buy some seeded areas. I guess kind of mentioned this, previously cleared areas and recently cleared. Initially, and I'll talk about this in challenges, I wanted to and this is in the report, let the area sit for a year. But that brings a different challenge. That brings lots of weeds, because after we clear an area, it explodes. And those weeds are tall, the ones that come in. They'll be 6-7 feet tall. Giant ragweed or pokeweed, and a little bit of that's okay, but we don't really want that everywhere at all. And also have seeded the lower prairie. That's kind of just a long-term management process, with prairies, is introducing some more seed. Diversity tends to be a challenge, I think, especially in a smaller prairie. And the challenges are that this commercial seed is expensive. We get mixes. In the future, we might be able to get just 1 or 2 species of something that we really want, but we're getting these new areas established. We're getting mixes of wildflowers and grasses, essentially, with some sedges. Seed collection, even if it's done from one park to the next, it's pretty time consuming, and I'm not cleaning the seed or anything. That means, it's not pure seed. It's a lot of other plant matter that's mixed in with it. Cleaning seed I've done a lot of that at Shaw, and it's ridiculously time consuming. And there's just, there are not enough hours in the week for me to be able to do all that sort of stuff. So anyway, there's our seed. Oh, I'm sorry. I had an entire list of challenges. Forgot about that. But a big part with the seeding is preparing the site, especially if it's seed that I purchased. We want to have that site be as good as possible to create the opportunities for success. And in that picture there, you can see it's nice and open and all that. That's because it's been prepared. Through weed warriors, through my own efforts. Also, you can sort of see the piles. We gotta rake or blow the leaves out of the way so that seed can get to the ground. So another problem, another challenge is that honeysuckle discourages seed germination. Allelopathic is the term for it, but we don't really know how much. I think probably varies by site and by plant or seed type. you know? And so, so there have been areas that were, you know, that have sat for a while. We have some newly cleared areas, and I'll be observing the differences in terms to see, oh, is it actually, I mean, maybe not worth it to buy seed, new seed, and to immediately, you know, spread it out in an area that I've just cleared, you know? Is it maybe worth getting a year worth of weeds, you know, and then eliminating those so that we can get more seed. But that also goes into the idea of collecting seed, because if the seed is free, well, it's okay. You know, if it doesn't work great, well, you know, at least we didn't spend $100 a pound for it. So especially in newly cleared areas, that's where I'm using a lot of the seed that I've collected on my own. And seeding does require some maintenance after the fact as well. Again, it's about controlling those tall weeds that will outcompete, you know, so we'll sort of have to weed eat or kind of bushwhack some of those taller weeds down. You know, don't really want to spray when there's newly established tender plants. So it's going to be mechanical, and that'll just be something that I have to do. Okay. Also, and this is something I've had in mind, you know, for the last 2 years, but I'm really trying to be a little bit more deliberate and systematic about, that is attending to the physical structures of habitats, you know, the wildlife, the pollinators, they definitely need plants. They need native plants, but they also, you know, need nesting and cover areas, and for thermoregulation, that's about, as I'll get to, that's mainly about rocks or cool areas in some instances. But there's also this maintenance need, you know, spend a lot of time picking up limbs and carrying those limbs to the dump site, you know, and sometimes it's easier, or at least more efficient, to maybe just stack those in an area where they can also provide habitat. You know, the same thing with leaves. Like if we removed every leaf at all these parks, we'd be, you know, all of us, the whole entire staff would be raking and vacuuming leaves, you know, up until August or something. So some of them can be left, and that provides valuable habitat. And so examples of some physical structures, and these are the natural ones. There's also human-made, I'll get to later, but leaf piles or just leaf litter, brush piles, snags, down logs, and I think that says rack pile. I can't really, people's images are in the way there. So a brush pile is just in terms of, you know, what it needs to look like or how it needs to be arranged. It has to be relatively dense, which again kind of serves the purpose of maintenance. You know, you want to fit things in, make it as compact as possible. And because that allows, you know, little things to stay dry. And the ideal, ecologically, the ideal place to put it is at the edge of the wooded areas. You know, sort of aesthetically less conspicuous areas are probably preferred, you know. And so I'd say that one of the big challenges, I've been talking to Ed about this, challenges related to brush piles is, you know, how can you make them visually appealing, or can you make them less unappealing? You know, if it looks the super tidy landscape, which might, you know, appeals to a lot of us and is really not, doesn't provide the same habitat value at all, really. And a lot of life is in the leaves, in those leaves that are down on the ground or in the stick piles and the brush piles. So that's something, you know, in the, you know, a lot of different sources strongly recommend brush piles for habitat. They don't tell you how to make them look good, you know. So that's something we'll try to work on. is how to incorporate these in a public park without looking like it's the cause of neglect, or, laziness or something
Yeah.
like that.
A question, have we had any complaints? Beverly?
We haven't had any complaints, but we really don't have that many, or I put them, the ones that have been there for a while are pretty inconspicuous areas.
Okay, okay.
So the new brush pile in that picture, that's around the pond, and so it's in a little more prominent of an area, but it's also put there on the edge to where it kind of looks like it's serving a structural purpose. And we should say that basically park patrons, in a sense, make their own brush piles. They love to stack, I think especially kids, they love to stack logs, make them in sort of a teepee shaped. So it's sort of going on already. Now the teepee wouldn't be great for, necessarily great habitat, but, it does show that people see some value in having logs lying around the parks if they're playing with them. Another challenge with brush piles is that honeysuckle just does not work very well. Obviously, we have an infinite supply of honeysuckle sticks, and it just doesn't stack, and because of its structure. Also, I've noticed that it doesn't break down like normal logs do. That just doesn't seem to even provide a food source for the fungi, or the invertebrates. Just nothing touches it, and it's almost like it's not biological material. I should just clarify, by no means are we talking about leaving every log or leaving every branch, in the park. We'll still be picking up plenty of those, especially in the grassy areas and whatnot. So this will be something that, and it might be a balance in terms of how many to still have to make it look like a managed landscape, while also providing the good habitat. It'll be like a balancing act, or sort of an art, I think, in terms of incorporating these things well and not overdoing it and having it look good. And it'll be some stuff to balance, and we'll just do what we normally do, which is experiment. Rock piles, this is something I haven't really done at all. There's this one rock pile here, but actually, to be honest, only recently have I kind of learned to appreciate their ecological value. I always loved little rock walls, just going hiking, through a state park or whatnot. You see these ancient rock walls that are normally, only maybe a few feet high max. That just sit there over time. That's always fascinated me, and I think it can be a really nice feature in the landscape. But they provide substantial habitat value. So it turns out, in terms of little things, including pollinators, including butterflies and bees, like living within these rocks, as well as anything cold-blooded. So that's a new thing that we're going to give a try. Just really going to start off with one. It's going to be short. It's going to be near the pond. It's kind of separating. It'll work as sort of a dividing line, kind of separating the wooded area over there from the prairie. And it won't be long, it'll be maybe 12, 15 feet, and it won't be high. So, and it won't require mortar or anything, just good stacking. But the challenge with this is, well, we don't really have a lot of rock sources in our parks. We've got some big boulders that we've had hanging around, but as far as small rocks, these are actually rocks that we dug up, but they're actually a better fit for the pond, and probably once we're in the pond, than they are for a wall. As you can see, that's not much of a wall right there. So this will be something to look out for. Rock is super cheap. Really, the limiting factor for people getting rock is a truck, and we've got some of those. So that's something I'm looking forward to getting started. Logs and snags. You know, we leave a lot of logs, and as well as standing dead trees, which are snags, or part of a stand. It doesn't have to be, it's generally not the whole tree. They actually are very valuable in terms of habitat value. You know, in a healthy forest, you know, studies have shown one in 10 of the trees there is actually going to be dead, you know, and standing. And then you have all your trees that are laying on the ground, your logs. And if you go out in the woods during the winter months, you know, this is when it's very evident. You'll see, I'm like, oh my, there's all these trees laying on the ground. I had no idea. So we have some of those, and you know, we want to keep some. As far as location, yeah, kind of throughout all the sort of natural like areas. Again, there's that aesthetic question as far as a challenge goes. You know, I've tried laying down some logs and it just didn't, I just feel like, you know, one particular log just didn't look right. It just didn't, you know, it wasn't a very good looking log, you know, and I can't really list the criteria of a good looking log. It's just sort of one of those things that I feel. But even if it is one, we might want to reorient it, you know, so it kind of runs the right direction with the path. This is another one of those things where I've never seen a, you know, best practices kind of list on how to make a log look great. I think like in this picture, I think ferns help sort of integrate a log within the park setting. But something still to play around with. And as far as snags go, you know, it's the challenge is just making sure that it's safe. It might require limb removal. You know, a full-size tree, you don't want to leave that standing for years on end. So particularly the branches are the main concern. So they're in the Stacy Woods, and you know, as well as in Warson, there are many logs in Stacy. I mean, they're mainly the smaller trees, often that aren't even, you know, that much taller than myself. And of course, something like that poses no real risk to hurting people. And they're you know, any ones that are near the trail are going to be small. Anyway, there's logs and snags. Artificial structures. This is just, you know, this is something that volunteers, particularly Eagle Scouts, have done, you know, assembling birdhouses and bat houses, mainly birdhouses, but also some bat houses, and have installed them throughout the parks. In doing that, this sort of project does create some real logistical challenges, you know, in terms of coordinating, you know, because it requires some staff to do some, if not, or most of the installations. And so there's a lot of pieces that have to come together, you know. All of the Eagle Scouts, they've raised the money, they've assembled all the boxes themselves. We didn't have to do any of that, but installation, in selecting the appropriate spot, you know, requires some logistical challenge. You know, it can pose, drilling into trees can pose a problem or potential problem to trees if it's the wrong tree or the wrong hole or whatever. And so I think that drilling into trees should be minimized from here. But you know, and there's the long-term maintenance issues depending on how well they're constructed. So there's some unknowns. You know, we don't want to go absolutely crazy with this and create up problems down the road. But that I think they're, you know, they kind of communicate what some of these areas are about. I think they've been a great addition. So signage. Oh, can you, is our picture in the way of that sign?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah.
just me. Okay, it's just me who
Yeah.
sees everybody else. Okay. So there has been a need for signs. And basically the people have told us that, patrons have told us that because they keep asking questions about what's going on. You know, why have you cleared that area? You know, what are the plans here? You know, especially in the Stacy Woods. So just need to let them know what's going on and, you know, what the general plan is. So we got these signs that I'm excited about that, you know, explain, hey, we're bringing in some natives here. These provide great habitat value and, you know, kind of steer clear of this area, especially in terms of seeded areas. In the first, let's say, at least like the first month, those plants are going to be real sensitive, and we don't want dogs running around through there or people trampling them. That's sort of the risk. But it also, I think, kind of shares the broader vision for some of these natural areas. So, and of course, just finally, a lot of this is made possible through volunteers from the Park Commission, volunteers from Weed Warriors, and generally, I believe that the restoration stuff, it's the easiest way or to kind of recruit volunteers, and then they have a great energy about it. You know, we've moved Weed Warriors, you know, into some of the parks because we wanted to cover more parks than just Stacy and Warson. But I feel like the volunteers are not as excited, you know, to be working a fence line or something rather than to remove invasives from the prairie was I thought like it was almost a very powerful community event. People were really into. They wanted to keep going. They didn't want to stop, even the kids. And so I just think the challenge is, you know, how to try to connect what volunteers are doing to some of these restoration plans, and while also not neglecting other parks that where these projects really haven't started yet. So just something that I'm keeping in mind. And I think that is it. So,
So, well, thank you so much, Brian. Are there any questions that any of the commission members have of Brian? He's been working really hard, and people usually think of the horticulturalist in the winter as taking time off, but that's not the case. Anybody have questions? Yes, Rob.
So, Brian, great presentation. Thanks for the enlightening look into your world. Wondered where water and the delivery of is sustainable water sources a part of this equation anywhere?
I'd say now it doesn't, you know, even if we were establishing sort of cacti, I mean, not so much cacti, but in the beginning, most plants require supplemental water for at least the first year. No, even ones that are really drought tolerant, just in the beginning. So, but none of these activities are kind of predicated on the assumption that they will be watered continually. You know, all these landscapes should be self-sustaining. And I've sort of tested it to a degree that some areas, some of these like restoration areas, I don't water like I do, the big trees that are planted, in front of the park or in the grass. Like those are the areas that require those big trees, especially big trees, just require a lot of water in the beginning. Eventually they should, that need should decrease, but even for the seeding, where some of these areas that are getting seeded, especially within Stacy Woods, they won't be watered at all. Not the first year, just not at all. And I do try to pick areas that are a little bit more moist, than a very dry high spot. But so I would say, watering is going to be minimized.
Yeah,
in all
interesting.
these budgets.
Thank you.
There are other questions?
I just have a very probably off the wall question, but you mentioned $100 a pound for the seeding.
Yeah.
How much seeding do you typically have to purchase for it to be effective?
So let's say
How many pounds, I guess, of seed?
right. Oh, yes, that's definitely a fair question. That would cover, that's a half acre worth of seed. And that's like all this, that's all the seed I bought, with the exception of some annuals, which are less expensive, just to sort of spice stuff up. I didn't anticipate spending $1,000 a year on seed or anything like that. If it, so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge seed budget.
Yeah.
Understood. I was just curious how much land that covered.
Yeah, and that is that's 500,000 seeds or some ridiculous. I mean, many of them are really, really tiny. So yeah, it's generally for prairies or woods, or it's generally like $500 up to $1,000 an acre of seeds.
For comparison, when we seed the ball fields or the playing fields, depending on what's going on in the seed market, we could be paying that or even higher. A couple of years ago, there was a big drought down where they were producing the grass seed for reseeding, and we were looking at $2,500 just to reseed portions of the playing fields at Warson and at Stacy. So in some respects, it can be cheaper too, because these aren't proprietary mixes. But as Brian explained, the labor to gather these seeds and then to dry them and stratify them and get them ready for planting out it does make them more expensive, because they're not necessarily done mechanically the way grass turf seed is.
And while grass seed, typical turf seed, is going to be much cheaper per pound, you're also applying it at much higher rates. Then it's generally about 5 pounds, 3 to 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So that's almost like 10 times the amount of seed.
So what I wanted to emphasize a little bit about Brian's presentation, there's been a big movement in the last several years in the Midwest, a campaign called Leave the Leaves. And you may see these signs people have now, these beautiful signs cropping up in gardens that say leave the leaves, that people put out in the fall. And one of the primary drivers of that is to provide that shelter that Brian talked about. And that's something we're doing in our parks. There's a reason that we have a substantial decline in fireflies. And one of them is they need that leaf litter to overwinter when the temperatures are cold, because without that, they don't survive the winter. And there are a lot of other species that really need the leaves down there. The other thing that happens is when the leaves break down, they're putting the nutrients back in the soil for that tree. So one of the trends in this region is people, or not what I shouldn't say trends, one of the popular things that people do in their gardens around here is they take all the leaves away, and then in the spring they buy mulch and pay to have it spread on their properties. When they had the free leaves there, that if they'd left the leaves in their beds and let them decompose, they've got the natural weed protection, they've got the mulch already being creative with the organisms that are there already. So it's kind of this weird thing how we are paying a lot of money to make our gardens less attractive. So it's kind of interesting. So this is a kind of a big shift. So it's really important that we get these signs out to educate park users, because the parks will look so different when we've completed a lot of this. And the new signs are fantastic. We're going to do an article in Olivet Life that kind of reiterates that, and have pictures of the brush piles and things in Olivet Life. And then we're going to expand some more smaller interpretive signs that can be put out temporarily in different places for people that are wandering by can read about them. So I'm just so pleased with this, and I'm so excited because, as we all know, this moves our mission forward for our Parks Master Vision Plan. So thank you very much, everyone, for your support, and thank you to all of you who've been out there helping with all of this. It's amazing.
Yeah, and some of these things that we do are harder to do in a residential, setting. If you didn't break the leaves out of your front yard, your neighbors would sort of wonder what's going on. And we have to remove some leaves. But in certain areas we can leave the leaves, and actually come later on the summer, you won't even be able to tell that we didn't pick those leaves up. And so.
Okay, any other questions?
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have the rest of your
Thank you,
evening
Brian.
back.
All right.
And we'll go on with business. Thank you so much.
And if anybody ever wants to, anybody, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions related to this, I'm happy and love to talk about this stuff. You'll probably regret it that you did reach out, but
Just bring your work gloves.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
All
you.
right. See you tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on with business. Couple of things. I neglected to call the roll at the beginning, but I think we're recording it on the screen, and then also as a public meeting, we are required to leave our wonderful images up of ourselves. So just as a reminder. So next order, excuse me, next order of business would be the director's report. We'll go through briefly what we're up to.
Great. Okay, so everyone had a chance to read this. So we have been postponing the basketball league due to the current COVID caseload. We have teams that have kids that are sick, and the parents have been appreciative of the delay. We made a decision this week to just push it out to the beginning of February so that we don't have to every week, the parents aren't waiting to hear if we're canceling it or not. So we push through to the end of February, and then we'll reassess. The sports coordinator, Corey, is also searching around right now to perhaps if we have to truncate much more of the season, we might have some options to do some workshops with the kids that missed portions of the league, just so that they get a little bit more robust experience and do some special clinics and things. But that is in development right now. We will reach a point at some point where we don't have enough time to do a full season before baseball starts. So we haven't reached that point yet, but we are keeping an eye on that. The young kids, the tiny ones, that's no problem. We can do theirs. It's the ones that actually are playing other teams in the league that will have some difficulties with. We had Parents Night Out on December 17th. It was quite successful, very popular activity. It was adorable. There's a lot more pictures on the city's Instagram if you would like to see more. Then we had a winter camp. This year, the way the school holidays fell, it allowed us to have a winter camp. Again, another very popular activity. For the first time in the pandemic, we did have COVID at camp. We had 2 children that stayed home on Thursday, and their families notified us, and then we notified all the campers that they had COVID. So from that, one of our staff members got sick, but we're all healed up and back now. Park operations, I gave you a whole list of all the things happening in the wintertime. This is a busy time for us, even though we're not doing all of our normal activities. We've been doing a lot of maintenance in the buildings and replacing water heaters, doing some training. Unfortunately, the crew was scheduled to go to the maintenance rodeo, but we did not go because of the COVID case surge. We've had 2 parks workers that had COVID pretty seriously and were out for a while, but they are back now. And then one of the things that Brian talked about, we suddenly have a huge clearing along the Dealman pathway. If you haven't had a chance to walk it recently, I definitely encourage you to go out and see that. One of the volunteers that we have on a regular basis in Weed Warriors called us because he saw it happening, and he volunteered to go out there with, he brought some friends, and he went with Brian. And behind the MSD crews, they followed along and made fresh cuts and treated the honeysuckle. Because when MSD comes through, they just cut things down. They don't treat it. So it would all have grown back. So it was an amazing opportunity for them to go through and very quickly kill a bunch of honeysuckle. And then we didn't have to chipper to pull it away because MSD did it all. So that was amazing. That was just a serendipitous moment that couldn't have happened without the volunteer workforce that's grown up over the years and that Brian supports. So that was amazing. That was just absolutely amazing. So I'm very thankful for that. We had Weed Warriors at Stacy Park, but you all know we also, for the first time, we're at Villa and Earthside. And now our next 2 meetings will be at Indian Meadows Park for the first time. And this is very exciting. So I included a little picture in here. You're also all going to get the notice to remind people again. We're going to park on Napoleon and then walk in and start at that X. And the reason we're starting at that X is that is where the gate is that reopens Indian Meadows to this whole section of the neighborhood. The gate was closed off and all the honeysuckle overgrew it. So a lot of people don't know that that's there. So the first step in reopening that and reopening that link for the neighborhood is to get all that honeysuckle out of there. So I'm very excited about this project. It's going to be a big renewal of Indian Meadows in that whole section. So I'm very excited about that. And that's my report.
Any questions? One thing, Bev, on the work in Indian Meadows, are we doing any notices to the people whose property is adjacent?
We're not, because we don't do that in our other parks.
Okay.
So we're clearing only on our land. We're only doing the fence line. This area was actually cleared mechanically a couple years ago, and it has grown back because it wasn't treated at the time. So when I say mechanically, about, I think 3 or 4 years ago, we brought one of the big forestry cutters and cleared this whole fence line. And so this hopefully will be an easier job clearing this back because everything should be a lot smaller. The only problem that Ed discovered building his pathways in areas where we've machine cleaned, the stalks are small, but there's multiple and they're attached to stumps under the ground. So we will have problems with that. So we'll be doing a lot of painting of the elixir of death on those stumps to really kill them.
Okay. Okay, other questions of Beverly? Okay, let's move on. Maxine, council report.
I will keep mine short and sweet like Beverly. If you drive down Olive Street Road, it's just really exciting. Plant Haven, I mean, everyone, it's just moving around along so beautifully. Everything's really busy. To see Plant Haven and Firestone and the apartment buildings, everything, the facades, it's just really shaping up, and they're indoors now for this bitter cold winter that has finally hit St. Louis. I feel bad for the people outside tonight, but from overnight tonight, Ameren is going to be laying underground wires at the Olive Crossing. A notice went out to the city today. If you're on the, if you get the email blast, and then we created door handles, door hangers, and put them in the in the area around the neighborhood where there might be some noise during the evening. This is something that does need to occur during the middle of the night. Otherwise, it would block up Olive Street Road during the day. But it's kind of cool that we're finally going underground with some of these utilities, and won't have the big poles up and down Olive Street Road. And that's one of the things that we were looking forward to with this project. So it's exciting. Otherwise, we're just moving along. I think at our last meeting, did I announce it that I think at our last meeting, we knew that Rick Knox had been appointed the new council member. Otherwise, we've just been busy. Last night, someone asked before we went online, we did interview last night 4 people for 2 positions for EDC. And at next Tuesday's meeting, we will make it a nomination and move forward with that. And we also have an opening for this Parks group, and we'll be making a recommendation for that. But I'm going to talk with about the process later. Well, we recently, as you all know, we recently interviewed a bunch of people. So we're pulling up their applications. Travis won the spot. No, Travis was selected, but there were some really awesome people. I think we interviewed 7 people that night. So we're pulling up those applications to look at who was there, and to reach out to some of those people to see if they're still interested and go that route. So instead of reopening it totally to the community and starting at square one. So yes.
Did you say the appointments coming are for PCDC?
EDC.
Oh, EDC. Okay, thank you.
2 of the members of EDC, the Economic Development Commission, moved
Yes, thank you.
out of town.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, and that's it. Are there any other questions? Rob?
Seeing the Plant Haven building,
We can't see you.
Oh,
I can hear, we got your mic and lost your camera. There we go.
that's the story of my life. The Plant Haven building is a very attractive building. I wondered if you knew of any of the tenants that were going in there.
No, I do not. I know that
I think Plant Haven itself will be in there, I believe.
Plant Haven will be at least a third to half, I believe.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
And I know that they have some people, some occupants that they're looking at for the other parts.
Some other folks, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and is everyone familiar with Plant Haven? Plant Haven is the group that has been renting space, the nursery that's been renting space on the Olivet Lanes parking lot for years,
Ever.
for a long, long time. They would put up temporary fencing. Some of this I'm sharing for Travis's background, but they would put up temporary fencing and then run like a plant store out right out off on Olive Street Road. So now they're building this building, and they will be in part of it, and then they'll rent out part of it. So it's much better than the eyesore that was there.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Hey, Maxine,
Yes?
I have a follow-up question to the development across from City Hall.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still trying to wrap my brain around, because it looks like what's on that sign would be so much bigger than the 2 open parcels. Was there purchase of land on either side, or is that the size of the land?
Oh, no, he
that-
bought the houses. I'm not sure if he bought all 3 of them or I think he bought all 3.
To the north or to the south, or well, in the south is that one
There's
house.
only 3 there now.
Oh, this is going to the north. So not the little greenhouse and then Jiffy Lube. It's on the other houses on the other side.
I thought he bought the one to the north and to the south.
Oh, okay.
There's
Okay, I
3
was just curious. Because it looked like a lot bigger than.
I apologize. I don't know all the land he bought there, but he's bought up those, he contracted those, he bought those other purchased those other homes.
And you anticipate it'll be kind of like a Castlegate development where it's attached housing? I couldn't quite, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and if you look at the picture, it's very attractive.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, it just looked very big for
Yeah,
that space, but
yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
So there's, the details are on the upcoming projects page on the city's website if you want to do a
Okay.
deep dive into it.
Thanks, Beth.
And I've also seen some on the TCDC agenda. They have a lot of information there too. Any other questions? Thank you, Maxine. I'm going to
Thank
move.
you.
I'm going to make another move, and I'm going to ask Beverly to talk more about the master plan implementation before we talk about the memorials.
Okay, okay, I'll go
Because
very quickly.
it's quite exciting. That
Yes, it's very exciting. In fact, today they did the big delivery of all the stormwater pipes. So I strongly encourage you to come by the park. You can't walk down as far as you could before, but if you give me advance notice, I will walk you in with a hard hat and a vest as far as I can. I'm gonna try and help Missy Waldman get in there because she can't, to kind of access a little bit better. So if those of you that haven't been by in a while, if you walk down and you want to see more, we'll coordinate with the site superintendent and I can get you in there. Just probably not this week because it's going to be so brutally cold out there. When it warms up next week, it might be a lot more pleasant experience. So here we are with our project update. We are city parks, the RFP, the request for proposals for the general contractor for all the bids is open. We had the pre-bid meeting yesterday and there were many contractors on. I was over Zoom, so it was easy to count all the faces. So we're anticipating having a robust response to the bid package. For the community center, as I mentioned, they are really starting to do a lot of the excavation. The pad is down, the gravel pad is down for the footprint of the community center. Today, when Dawn and I were down there, we saw some of the debris bags getting ready with in advance of concrete and the rebar. And it looks like they're also starting to install some of the blankets that'll be used to warm concrete. So we are getting very close to having rebar on site and concrete pouring, which is hugely exciting. The timeline remains unchanged for the most part. The Stacy Park schematic design was presented to All of It in Bloom. They are very pleased with it. We met on site with their garden captain and walked the site. They gave some recommendations as far as some of the soil prep we're doing, and they were offered a tree versus a shrub. They chose a shrub. They are going to be adjacent, as you all know now, to the sculpture, and they gave some recommendations for the plants around the sculpture. We have a plan now to relocate all of their plants. Moving forward with that, I'll put out a call to you if we need more volunteers to do that. Brian's getting started on that now. He's going to help them quite a bit, and we'll be storing those plants over at the community center, the ones that aren't getting farmed out of the places. So it's very exciting. We sent termination letters to our 2 current community center tenants. There's quite a bit of site clearing for Great Rivers Greenway, and now there are actual construction vehicles up on the old park site with the park house site. So again, it's very, very exciting. And one of the biggest things is they have power to the site now. Ameren was able to come and install the new pole and take out the old pole. So that was huge. We waited that for quite some time. I think they were delayed by the tornadoes. So these pictures are from the last couple of weeks and they're out of date already. So it's pretty exciting. So this is the site grading, the new poles going in. You can't walk down as far now along the trail because they're going to have active machines in there. And rather than try and shoo people out of the park ahead of the work, we're just closing it off to allow them to get in there. They're going to start removing the old asphalt very soon. Here's some of the grading work that's starting over there. The park timeline for all the park renovations, our tentative timeline, it has not changed. We anticipate that when the bid comes in, the contractors that are bidding, they have to put their recommended timeline in there too. But until we actually sign contracts and have that kickoff meeting, this is still suggested, but this is, we reiterated at the pre-bid meeting, we'd really like to start, Stacy, March 1st. Here's an old picture of the building pad, so you can see it's all prepped. You can't tell from this picture, but when you stand looking down it, you can actually see the outline. You can see the indoor playground coming off. You can see where the front door is. This gives you a little better idea. You see, this is the gym coming out here. This is the multi-purpose room. Over here is the indoor playground. So when you stand and look down, it is really, really clear. Go back.
Bev, do you want me to show that video?
I would love you to. Then attached in here for you to peruse is the dashboard. Now I understand people were interested in the timeline. So this is a dashboard that we get the first of the month, and it's for the last 30 days. So it will have the first week's date on it each time. And that's the format that Navigate uses. And this reiterates some of those pictures you've seen. And this is going to the council as well. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Dawn because we've been doing time-lapse videos of the site, and Dawn's got a quick snippet to show you.
Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so the time-lapse video that we have, it's set up in increments of 15 minutes. So it looks like a blink whenever I play it all the way through, but I'll play it all the way through once, and then I'll slowly go through so you can see it frame by frame, picture by picture, 15 minutes at a time. So.
Sorry, Don, I blinked. Can you play it again? Okay, that's very good. Made earth moving equipment.
So what you can see here is they did reinforcement. So they had everything spread, but then in the indoor playground, they went in and did extra work in there because of the foundation of the playground that's coming. So it required slightly different concrete foundation than the other parts of the center.
This is incredible.
The Walhalla that heavy, Bev?
No, it's the piers that go down inside the ground. Yeah. So each of these, so in the time that we've had since the city center was built, there have been even further advancements to the GPS that's used on these bulldozers. So it used to be you knew that they had GPS coordinates because you could see the antennas and the wires sticking up off them. Now the systems are so small, they're within the cab and within the machinery. So you don't even see those antennas anymore. But each one of those vehicles or pieces of equipment has GPS positioning on it that's matching up with the coordinates and the depth of the materials they're putting down and the alignments to make sure that they're exactly, the grading and the smoothing and the layering of the gravel is exactly right. It's fascinating.
So are there other questions about the project? The thing that was amazing to me, I attended the pre-bid conference on Tuesday, and it was amazing to me. The bids are going to go before City Council on February 8th, I believe it's the February 8th, and they're talking about starting pretty much 2 or 3 of the parks on March 1st to be completed by the end of the summer. So it's moving.
Yeah, definitely. So
Nice.
take it, you can, that detailed, that, that proposal we have in there for the park construction timeline, we really are going to try and stick to that. It was reiterated several times during the meeting that our goal on these park renovation projects, in addition to being on time and on budget and all of that, but our goal is 0 tree loss. So that was reiterated multiple times to the bidders that the city places a very high priority on the natural environment and our existing trees. And that's our message all the way through, is that we really adhere to our tree protection policies and that they're assets to us. They're not just something we like to look at, but it's a true asset to our parkland.
Okay,
Great. One thing I didn't put in the updates but I'll bring back more information next month is when I attended the Olivet in Bloom board meeting, I gave them a heads up that I'm going to be coming to them with a funding request for our new native garden out at for the new community center. They've already committed to providing the volunteers to help us install the plants, but I'm going to be giving them a $1 ask at the next meeting. They also endorsed me applying to a small grant for a new native garden. We're doing it to replace the Bradford pears at the old community center site. I wrote that grant and turned it in last week. It's for $800 or less, but as you heard tonight, the cost of native plants, if we get it, it's great. We will not complain. It'll be wonderful. So I'll have more on that next month, more formally.
okay. We'll get back. I've been all over the place tonight. Sorry about that. A couple of groups have been working on things since the last meeting, and one of the groups that I was part of, and Ed and Keisha were part of, is we're tackling the whole issue of memorials in the parks. And I was kind of a sideshow, but Ed did the lion's share of that because we walked the parks to see what memorials there are and what kind of what's there. And I think you saw in the report that Ed took pictures of a lot of the benches, and you can see kind of what's going on there. Keisha put together a report which was in your materials. Well, Keisha kept us in line. Let's just say that, and wordsmithed and did a great job on it. But in terms of going through what we were doing, the first thing is identifying what the memorials are that are out there. Then we're trying to figure out what to do with them, because a lot of them will be displaced with the construction. And then there's some issues that I think that we need to discuss among ourselves and perhaps at the council level as well, as far as what we do with the memorials that are there. There's some that are really broken down. You can see a couple of the benches here that are going through. Some of them are in good shape, other ones aren't. One of the things we have to deal with is we've got several rocks around with brass plates on them, and we have to decide kind of what's going to happen with those. Because where we're moving toward is pretty much a zero plate, zero memorial. How would you describe it? Plates.
We're moving to no plaques or memorials in the park, with the exception of the benches, because as you can see from the condition of the benches deteriorate far faster than the plaques. And when people pay for a bench, they're only paying for that one bench. They're not paying, the bench doesn't last forever, but the plaques pretty much do. So the new program of doing the benches that where the engraving is on the bench, then we no longer have to worry about what to do with that memorial when the bench deteriorates. So I'm going to bring it back to this page because I think the commissioners, Lee and Person and Kastner, had an ask of the council representative Weil about this.
Yeah, I think the issue that we're looking at is, do people recognize the names? We, particularly, we will probably be reaching out to some of those folks. One, to those that are going away completely, to talk about in a thoughtful manner how we're going to continue to memorialize those folks, whether it be through the website or whatever. But also what we need to do with some of the larger memorial plaques that are out there as well. I mean, I'm talking about the plaques at the pond, the Feldman one. There's one, and I don't know, do you have the color? Do you have the picture of that? The one that's on the trail that?
Yeah, these are the ones. So so Feldman, we know how to contact, and Gartenberg, we know how to contact. But the one that we are unfamiliar with, that we're wondering if it's still, if there's anybody from the Gluscoder family around or the Lambrix family. Those are the two that we're very curious about. And then I'm researching into, does West County Rotary still meet? But Maxine, the hope is, do you recognize those names, or can you take it back to council and see if anybody on the council recognizes those names?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have it printed out here, so let me just mark them.
Sure. Yeah. Gluscoder, who was a council member,
Really
and
close.
Lambrix, I believe, was also a council member. So those are the two we're unfamiliar with.
Okay, and
don't know.
and Gartenberg and Feldman, you know how to reach, right?
Yeah, we know how to reach those families. Yeah.
Okay,
But no,
Yeah.
and just to reiterate, no decision's been made. The Feldman and the Gluscoder rocks are not real rocks. They're actually composites of fiberglass and rock. The Lambrix is a true boulder.
so are these other families, are you not looking to reach them to find out if they want to
Well,
upgrade or get?
these families, we think we have their contact information, we think, except for there's another Gluscoder here.
It's the same one, which the,
Yeah, there's two memorials for the same person. So the
Right.
benches are easy because we can reach out to those families and see if they want to do another bench, and we can give them their plaque back. Actually, one of the families on here already did that. Actually, two families on here. So the Steens have already replaced their bench, and the Pollocks have replaced their bench. So we have the committee, the working group has a concept they're working on towards that. Again, nothing's decided yet. The group's going to bring back more information to you, but there's kind of a path for that, because you have this, they did a bench and now we have a new bench that can come in. They can choose to participate or not. But these big rocks, those are the ones we're not quite sure what to do. So if the family's interested, then absolutely they could have a bench somewhere, but what do we do with that rock? So no decisions have been made. We don't know what we're going to do with it, but we would like to know if there are still family members in the area that we can contact when we have a path forward.
And I think the other side of this is that some of those, I think, were put in the parks by council resolution. And so we need to make
Yes.
sure, that council as we're developing the policies and doing this, that council is with that and feels like they're part of the process, that we're not saying,
Yeah,
we're not the renegades out here saying, okay, we're gonna do this, and then
right.
the
Right.
council has to come back and clean up what we messed up.
Yeah, so Maxine, Morley Gluscoder, I found an old resolution that the trail in the park was actually named for him. But we don't have any record of that, but I found it in the minutes of the council meeting. So that's something that the council, we need.
And
to
how
make
far
aware.
back?
Pardon me?
How far back?
Pretty far back. I'm thinking in the 80s.
Okay.
The
So-
one, to my recollection, Maxine, the one memorial was in the 80s, and I think one was done in the early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the Lambricks, I think, is the oldest one in the park. That one may go even further back. That one I haven't researched through the archives, but I will. Darren.
I didn't think the
Darren's very
80s were
good at
that
helping
long
with
ago.
that. Pardon me?
I didn't think the 80s were that long ago. Okay.
Well,
They weren't, trust
but
me,
it's more than
they
30
weren't.
years. Yeah, so it's almost
think-
40 years.
Maxine, I think that Lambrick one was done at the same time Irvside Park was renamed.
Oh,
But
from
I may be
Centerton.
wrong.
Okay. Okay.
You think so? I think it's earlier than that, don't you?
Well, it was in that same time period, in the 70s, I think.
Oh, Earthside was named in the 70s?
Yeah, the late 70s.
No, I think it was the 90s, the late
Well-
80s.
Okay.
I don't,
Yeah.
What's 10 years
That
between-
Lambricks used to have a flagpole there, so it could be even earlier.
So,
okay, well,
I do have a question. So these new, and if it's appropriate, these new benches, like when you sell them or sell them, when someone says they want to do one, are you able to tell how many years you anticipate that they'll last? Like,
that,
Well, the vendor right now has a time frame on them of about 20 to 25 years. We're telling people 10 years, but because we're in St. Louis, and so there's
Yeah,
not
well-
not just cold, but we also have high humidity. But the reason that these benches were selected is because they're cheap, so they will last much better than the other park benches that were not. And that is some of the policies that the working group's working on, is to make sure that we set that expectation when people pay the money for the benches. Right now, people see a picture of what the bench looks like new and what the bench looks like in a year's time, because we don't want a repeat of the family that painted the bench on their own, because it ruined the teak and it looks terrible. So that family was told, but we need to have a much more specific. And what's interesting is I spoke with the woman who manages the memorial policies at Forest Park Forever, because we did like those when the committee did their research. And she said that they have that problem too, even at Forest Park Forever, that people, they have them read the expectations, they sign the expectations, they get a special certificate that outlines those expectations again, and yet people still come and do things to their trees and things that they didn't want them to do. So it's not unique to all of that. This is something that that everyone grapples with.
right,
Yeah.
because when someone names something or memorializes it, they want it to last forever.
Beverly?
For those plaques that are either stuck in composite rocks or we're quote looking for a place to dispose of those properly. And I know you eventually run out of wall, but would one of our new structures or existing renovated structures lend itself to being a memorial wall where those plaques could be preserved rather than spending a bunch of person hours trying to track down all these people? And
Well, yes, I mean, that's something that we have talked about in the past, that could we do a memorial wall? That means that we then have to maintain a memorial wall, and that means other people will want to buy a spot on that memorial wall. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really get rid of our problem,
right.
but it's something that we haven't abandoned completely. But but I want to reiterate that when people bought these, they probably paid a couple $100s for them. So these
Sure.
benches now cost over $1,200.
Right.
So, how, when you pay a fee, that expectation can't be for a lifetime.
Right.
Or multiple lifetimes, unless
So-
it's a very substantial donation. So
Right.
the working
no.
group, those are things that they're grappling with to bring recommendations.
So,
to.
so from the working group, what we have presented is an interim report. And we're trying to get some feedback. And I think, Rob, your question about the memorial wall is appropriate in terms of
Yes.
what we can do. I think one of the other pieces we want to make sure that we're that a wider group of people are on board with the concept at this point, because clearly from this commission's standpoint, I mean, this is a subgroup of this commission, and this commission then has to present that to the city council.
Yeah.
For adoption. And so we're talking, we're probably talking a couple of months out in terms of, this will be back next month,
Yeah, so-
and we'll have to go from there. But we're trying to, this is kind of, let's see, in city council language, this is a preliminary report, and it's not even the first reading yet. So, but kind of where we're doing, and I think a lot of what we were looking at was based on the Forest Park Forever model, because they've got experience with it and can do that. And I've been doing all the talking. Keisha or Ed, do you have anything to add
Can
to?
I ask a question?
Acknowledge Sue because she's been waiting to speak.
Oh, yeah, go Sue.
I wanted to ask a question before we even got started, so I'm gonna back up here for a second.
Okay.
There was an issue with one of the benches that had been painted or stained.
That was on the trail.
So what
On the
was the
walking path.
resolution of that?
We don't
Or
have a
has it-
resolution. We're trying to figure out what to do.
So was
Because
it done by the people that purchased that bench?
it was,
Okay,
yeah.
so
It would
that's one of the
cost,
issues, right?
it would, yes,
it-
it would cost a lot of money for us to remove it and have it refinished. And I'm not sure my park crew has the skill to do it, so we would have to send it somewhere. So one option is we just leave it. And because I don't know what kind of stain it is.
What's the difference in replacing it versus trying to repair it?
Well, the new bench is gonna be about $1,200. So
Do
I
you have
would
any
have to get an
idea what the
estimate
repair
for the
would be?
refinishing, because the refinishing might cost more than a new bench.
Yeah, that was the question was, can we just replace it?
But we shouldn't have to replace it.
No, I mean, have that, work with the family to get it replaced.
Yeah, and that family spent quite a bit of money because they not only did the bench, they did a larger, nicer pad. They paid for an up.
Why did they,
And they paid for that new tree. So they paid a lot of money.
so why did they do that?
I don't know.
Which, can you bring up the picture of that bench? I was just,
I don't think we have a picture.
We
of
don't
that
have a
bench in this.
current one. It doesn't show the,
It looks like this, but it's not this one. But this is that style of bench that it is.
But when it was shellacked with a darker color than that is natural.
Yeah.
looking.
and
And
it's
they
not,
they put filler on the ends, and the
Right.
filler can take the stain, so it looks a little piebald.
right.
Yeah,
So-
and the problem is
It's gonna
because it's teak, teak can't take all stains. So we just don't know what it is.
Okay. And there's no way to stop that other than request that they not do that.
And that's what the working group's working on, is to have much, I give them a piece of paper with photos on it. So there needs to be something that they sign that says, I agree that this bench will weather and we will not doctor it. We need to be that specific, and they have to actually agree to that.
Okay, that was my general question before we got into this whole thing.
Okay.
Well, and it sounds like too that we also, it's make me think that we also need a part of our policy to deal with the eventuality of something like this, right? So
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
the consequence? And that needs to be part of it. So it's not enough just to say, don't do these things, but we also maybe need to add that, well, then the consequence of doing something
Remove it.
is this. It is that you might be required to replace the bench at your own cost, or it just may be gone. We just may take
Right.
it out if it's not, if it's, you know,
Right,
damaging in
right.
any way, that kind of. So I
Yeah,
that's a good,
yeah,
I didn't, we
because
hadn't
it's,
thought
because
about
it
that yet.
becomes the property of the city. It becomes the property of the city and they can't just come and arbitrarily do it. And that's kind of what happens with the trees too, is that some people will come and decorate their trees and put things on them that actually harm the life of the trees. So, you know, we have to have language about that too.
So Don,
And in this case, what is more than likely going to happen with that bench, it's not going to last the 10 years that we have said that it may, because they have done something to it that's basically, you know, going to kill it faster, or dry rot it faster, I should say.
So, and lastly, this, Ed, you might want to chime in here too. On that list that you had of all the memorials, Jim, did
Yeah.
that include the plaques that we inventoried when we did the original master plan? There are a number of plaques on the ground and the trees around the prairie. I didn't see those in there.
They're there. There's 3 of them in
Okay.
there.
yeah, now, Ed, did you find any on the prairie?
I thought there were 8.
So I mean, I did as much extensive as a search as I could. The closest one I found was for Tom, a former commissioner that's kind of at the edge of the prairie, but within the prairie itself or in the upper prairie, I did not come across any that I could find. I mean, I also asked Leonard if he knew of any secret or any places where there might be some that I may
Well, I
have missed.
thought that I had 4 or 6 pictures that I had given to Jonathan that were in the original inventory. But-
So we can go back through the inventory and
Yeah.
look for them, but this,
Yeah, let's do
this
that.
one is this is on the other side of the prairie. That's on the
Yeah.
prairie edge.
These were flat on the ground, Beverly, if you recall.
Well, I don't remember those. What? Oh, you mean, are you talking about the bricks?
It was it wasn't really a brick, but it was a plaque on the ground.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of that, Sue. And honestly, that's why when I was looking and I couldn't find them, I asked Leonard, because there was something in the back of my brain that kept saying there has to be more than this, because I remember, but I could not find, maybe they've been covered up or they've been dug up, but I did a fairly thorough.
We may have taken them out. I mean,
Yeah, we haven't taken them out, but that doesn't mean that they
Someone
didn't
else
get
didn't.
mowed over, because that's
well,
one of
that's
the
my point,
problems.
that they got taken out by the mowers.
It could be. So these ones, you can see this one's chipped right here. I mean, these are so
Yeah.
fragile. This one's got a big chip on it over here.
These
So-
were flat, right?
Yeah,
With a little bitty
So we'll
stand.
go through the inventory and see if we can find the ones you're referencing in
mean,
there.
If the families haven't squawked, I'm not that worried about it, but I did recall we had a bunch and they were in the picture inventory we gave Jonathan.
Yeah. You can see here's a tree that's been decorated for Christmas. This. Yeah, so Forest Park
Okay.
Forever is trying for that not to happen.
So I guess one of as you know, as a working group, one of the things that we're really trying to get to is looking at the initial interim report as a full commission. Do you see anything that you object to? We want to continue to move forward to develop this policy and bring that back, another draft back to you next month. That'll be a little bit more intensive, but we want to continue forward movement because of some of the upcoming timelines. So is there anything that, in terms of the other donations besides the benches? We also talked about, flower donations, tree donations, and possible adoptions of either trees or flowers and things throughout the park. But again, we're trying to get away from plaques, bricks, physical things in the parks to something that's more that requires less maintenance for the staff and upkeep. So more of, maybe it's in the minutes of the council meeting, or it's, it's on the website, it's in the newsletter, those type of recognitions, but not necessarily bench plaques outside of the actual probably benches would be the only thing.
Maxine, did you have a-
I'm sorry, Jeff. I was gonna say, just adding to Keisha said, the other thing I think or at least I definitely want to know about is what the commission's opinion is, or if they have any ideas on what we should do with these legacy rocks and plaques. So I know we talked about that, but I didn't know if anybody had any strong feelings. Do they feel like these are, landmarks in the parks that shouldn't be moved and they're just grandfathered in? Or, in the interest of kind of starting with a fresh policy, are there any ideas for what we should do or how we should approach this?
That was the point of the memorial wall. Figure out one place to stack them all and lay them out, put them up, and be done with it, rather than spending a bunch of person hours trying to find out who owns what and what do they want to do with it, because we really don't want. But that was one recommendation.
We would still need to notify them though, out of respect. we'd
For the
wanna tell them.
change. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ed, to answer your question, I'm like Rob, partial to having these things live on. I think that it's in good faith, right? They donated to it. There's a plaque. Not a bad idea to keep them around. And to Keisha's question, the only thing that I'm curious about, and being a young guy, I could be completely off on this, but I'm wondering if the other folks on the call here think that by moving away from, not away necessarily, but maybe limiting the bench donations, or like the actual tangible plaques and stuff, do we expect the donations to go down? Is that a major driver for folks, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. I don't know, but I'm curious if that, like, are people more inclined to donate because of that versus donating just to a cash donation or to a tree donation or things like that? So just a young guy's question for not being involved in this in the past.
I think some of the research, go ahead, Beverly.
Well, I was going to say that that's something actually that the working group really talked about, Travis. It's a great question, because what the working group was talking about is, why do we do this? What's the point? And is it something that we're using to fund park operations, or are we doing it because people want it? And basically we're doing it because people want it. This does not fund park operations. Right now, we're only charging the cost of the bench. The city's absorbing the cost of the shipping, the engraving, and the installation. The working group will have a recommendation to actually recoup back those costs, because they are not insignificant. But people call on a frequent basis wanting to do something. And every time a new bench goes in, someone else calls and they want to do a bench. So it's kind of a self-perpetuating thing that we have. So it's a lot of people feel an attachment to the park, and when someone passes away, they do want to have something that'll to have some longevity in it. So for example, the family that painted their bench, they actually, it's a very, very wonderful story. The person that they bought the bench for had gone through a long battle with cancer, and he walked the trail during his treatment, and there was no place for him to sit at their resting point when he needed to rest. So he would talk with his wife as they were walking that we should give a bench. And so when he passed away, his wife called the city, and we didn't have a bench program at that time. We'd suspended the old one. So that was our very first bench we put in with the new style that would have the longevity and have the engraving on it. And it was beautiful. It looked good. We kind of built a program out of thin air to have that and to kind of be our test. And then when that bench went in, all of a sudden we had more bench calls of people wanting to donate benches. So I think there is definitely a need for it, but I think that the need is however we can shape it. And what I'm very pleased with, the working group has gone past that to allow these different levels, because one of the drivers the working group's really working on is making sure that it's accessible for all all levels. So because those benches are, they're substantial. They cost a lot of money and they'll be there for a long time, but not everyone has those resources. So to bring in some equity, we can have a tree donation that is cost less. We can have Monarch Way Station that costs even less, so that we can have, people can have a significant impact on the park landscape, but without that huge dollar amount.
Another
hope
thing
I-
I was going to say is that, as part of the working group, we've done a lot of research, and I think that people that care about the parks and they care about the environment are will want to donate it. We looked at different park programs across the region, across the country. And that's why we have the different levels. The things that we have before you and have presented in this report have been pretty constant in all of the park programs that we looked at. There was only one addition, and that was bricks that we decided against. That seemed to be a constant. So people donate for trees, they donate for plants, they donate for benches. And so that is what we base this upon. And I think that people that really care about the environment, whether they're in our parks all the time, will care about making sure that we have, we maintain the ecosystem of our parks through plants and trees. And then also, I think just, we did kind of in the beginning talk about, a specific tree, or, being able to have the geocode of where the trees are located, or is it just that you're donating a tree? And then just give different levels for that. So I think that to your question, Travis, people who care about the environment will definitely want to support the parks in any way they can.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for elaborating. That's
So-
probably my age and maybe inexperience shining there. So,
It was mine as well until I did the research.
So one more question though, is I know that the thing to do sort of currently is a lot of people want to donate towards the maintenance of trees, et cetera, knowing that it is costly. So have we looked at that, like having somewhere to list people that have done that and then take any amount that they can give?
Yep,
Well, I
that's
think-
the think in there.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
that
that's a
would-
cash donation.
That would be the first donation, sort of the general. We might be able to put some more wording around it to.
Yeah.
To.
And then there's also this adoption of existing plants and trees within the parks.
Yeah, and one of the things as we were going through the conversation is we keep talking about benches. At some point, we're going to run out of
Mhm,
bench space.
mhm.
And also people, if you go, you look at Stacy, people like to put benches in Stacy's because a lot of people walk there, but we have 4 other parks. And so we have to thread that into it as well and get it. And basically at some point, there's going to be enough benches in Stacy that there won't be any more opportunities to do it there. Maybe along the path, maybe Villa Herbside or Indian Meadows.
hey, sorry, Jim, but
Morrison, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have,
Yeah,
Kurt-
Rob
I was
or Travis, I'm sorry.
sorry. I was going to say not to talk over. Sorry, Rob. I think you're on mute too, by the way. If we're running out of bench space, here's a kind of a wild idea, but why don't we triple or quadruple the price for something like that? We certainly recoup what we have and then cover what we've been missing for the last few years. And then we'll probably limit the number of benches anyways, but the people that do, it'll be at a severe surplus.
Mhm.
I don't know, just off the cuff thought. You don't have
No, I
to,
mean,
to just thinking out loud.
It's called basic economic supply and demand.
Right, yeah, right.
yeah, when you have
I
a
don't
waiting
know.
list, you clearly aren't charging enough.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and we certainly, the city shouldn't be paying for any, you said we were
Mhm.
paying, the severe, cost to ship it and everything else. I mean, if
Yeah,
we're running out
yeah.
of space, so let's fix that for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. So Rob, what were you going to say something?
I was negotiating with my 8-year-old. Thank you.
Oh, okay, okay. Anyway, so appreciate the the discussion, and that's really what we wanted to do tonight, is to get the discussion going, and then to kind of soften things up so that it doesn't come through as a fait accompli at the when it actually comes through. Because, as I said, we'll get the group back together, and then also we want to make sure that that we incorporate some of the council feelings as well. Ed, you were going to say something?
Can I have a quick follow-up to Rob's idea of the memorial wall? So Rob and Travis, or anyone, is a photograph of the plaque on a webpage honoring and with a list, would that be enough, do you think? Or do you think that's not enough? Because I guess one thing, like the practical thing about a wall, of course, what Bev mentioned, but can it be a virtual wall? And would that be enough to honor what came before? I think that's what I'm grappling with. I don't have the answer to it. I was hoping that maybe some other folks here on the commission, Maxine, anybody from council, kind of weigh in, because I think it's a real issue to try to figure out, especially for the rocks, of course, the benches are a little easier. But do you feel like that's enough, or do you think that's not enough?
The thought behind that was, you've got all these plaques that we're gonna go put in a dumpster, return them back to their families, and then if I'm understanding this correctly, that, for instance, Morley Gloss Cutter's rock down at the corner of the park, I don't know if I could walk that or run Stacy Park the same way again if I didn't see Morley's name there. But I'm kidding about that. I can say that with a name like Hoyerman. But the point is there's something, we're going to have all these plaques left over that we need to do something with them. And there's a number of things we could do. I'm just kind of having a visual spell on that west side of the pavilion that I know is going to get torn down, but part of that structure is going to be still there, facing the ball fields, and just kind of just putting them all up there on that wall and just letting them be. And these were
Memories
things,
from our past.
it just, yeah, that an Olivet history wall, or we could call it what you will. I mean, we'll figure it out. But that way, the use does get preserved. The intention is there, and the people can see it, and it decorates that wall. That's all. I mean, I tried to make it. I wasn't trying to be overly complex about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a question, and it takes us back to a few meetings ago, and it might be back when we were talking about the pavilion, but I remember people getting pumped up about possibly doing like some of those donation bricks, and I think Keisha had shared with us that they did them at the high school when they redid some and that it's more of a fundraiser. And we had talked about having like an area near the new pavilion, whether that you could have people donate bricks with inscriptions, and maybe some of those plaques could be put into some of those bricks. Maybe those we just, incorporate into that.
Yeah.
But I don't even know where we went with that, if that got dropped or if that's another way of, it was more about, it'd be for the here and now, because once it got.
Yeah, we talked briefly about bricks, and we were thinking, I mean, it's been very effectively done at the zoo and at the botanical gardens, but that's on a very large scale. And I have experience, granted it was 30 years ago, or 35, probably 35 years ago, in looking at bricks and so forth. And it's a much more complex deal than first appears. And I think as we were talking about it, correct me if I'm going afar, Keisha and Ed, but that the scale at which we would be doing it, it would just, the cost and the hassle would not be that great, would not warrant the brick piece of things.
I know that at my congregation that they just have like a little path that is done with the bricks with maybe a little trellis over it. And it's not some grandiose project. And I think that we could honor people with those bricks also. You know, it's like we do volunteers of the year. It's not just, it wouldn't just have to be memorials. It could be people could honor their children or teachers at Old Bonham or, things. I don't know. I think it has potential if it's not limited.
Why don't we take that back to the group and we'll look at it and see kind of what's.
Just a thought, just throwing it back out there. Council hasn't discussed it or anything, but I remember walking away from one of these meetings and people being pumped up about it. So I was just wondering if it's dropped, it's dropped, but I kind of just thought it's worth, looking at, if not for a large space, for at least maybe like just a little walkway or area.
Okay. Other things.
So while we were doing this, I did try to do a little research on Morley Gluscotter, but so I found out his wife's, someone's maiden name that had this and who his daughters were, and that they went to Ladue. So I will keep following that trail and get back to you. But the person that I then texted said they grew up with him, but they think that the family is that there aren't members living, but I recognize some people in the obituary they just sent me, so I'll reach out to some of these other people.
Okay, that's what we're trying to do, is to get that.
Yeah.
I'll play Sherlock Holmes tomorrow.
Okay.
At a meeting, I think last year, I think during the beginning of the pandemic, remember someone wrote in to the commission asking who he was. So one of his obituaries is in the old minutes, so I can send that to you too.
Okay.
And that's where
great.
I found the count, and I'll send you the council action.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, this is an interim report, and we can go from there. And given the late hour, the other group that we've been working on has been the fee group. Rob and I have been doing some work with working with staff on fees for the new community center, because that's going to be coming up before we know it. And we don't have a formal report tonight, but we're moving along on that. And so we will be getting more information, and a lot of that we'll be working with staff as well.
I think Rob has something he wanted to share with the commission, Jim.
Okay.
Rob, I think you have screen sharing permissions.
Just a second.
While he's doing that, can you make sure you send out the rest of the working groups and who's associated with which group?
So
Yes.
Thank you.
It was in the minutes from last month, and I'll resend it.
All right, thanks.
So just a second. Yeah, so I think for the most part, we could table most of this, but let me, until considering how late it is. Just a second here. I can't get to this very easily.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I've got it.
Thanks.
So Rob did a lot of work on this, so I wanted to make sure everybody could see it. So
Yeah.
this working group has a spreadsheet started. So Rob, if you want to just very quickly.
So, yeah, so just very cursory, because so in looking at the initial stack of data, and I think to everybody's point, we need to align our data, our different cost categories to our offering, and B, make sure we are comparing, doing turnips to turnips aligning our costs to you know, to I'm losing my voice here. Make sure we are aligning like for like capabilities between our community center, our parks, to the community center parks offerings that we're comparing to in this search for testing the market for what we can charge. This is totally cursory. The gaps you're seeing here are where there were challenges in trying to align our rates and our offering to rates and offerings in each of these different community centers. I'd like you to focus on just the membership category, if you would, because that's the most populous so far. Some initial findings, and I will keep it 8675. Just to give everybody a heads up, I think initial findings is community centers tended to price in two categories or two strategies. One was a bundled membership where you could purchase, exercise classes, weight program, gym program on a daily, monthly, quarterly, semi-monthly, annually cycle, and buy that in the content of a membership card that would be charged accordingly. Was A. Or B, the community center charged straight a programmatic type charge where there was no monthly or fee charged by the a calendar cycle, and that's where over the far left, it seems the leading way to kind of go to market is through a membership fee, and then bundle services and programs around that membership fee versus trying to sell individual programs or market individual programs. That was A. B, municipalities are marketing capabilities that they don't have through partnerships with other municipalities, i.e. Creve Coeur has a marketing agreement with the Maryland Heights to get access to their Aquaport program. Last thought was, I've already covered aligning what we're actually testing the market for against what we're offering here at the community center so that we can get our cost categories aligned, our rate categories aligned. And then I think that's it. It would be nice to maybe have, particularly in this effort, maybe a staff member be a part of the discussion, or another commissioner be a part of this working group, because this is actually a lot of data. It is what it ends up being. It's not a little data.
Yeah, I think that is a really good idea. I think that was kind of the original intent when it was started. I think it's really important that you include the current fees in all of it, but also the pro forma. So when the community center was given the green light by the city council, there's the pro forma that actually did the projections for the operation costs and had suggested fees in it. So I think that would be really important to have in there as a baseline to see where we're going with that, and also take a look at the revenue projections that have already been built into the operations. So I think that because you're not starting from blank with making fee suggestions, so they need to take that into account. Now, that was a couple of years ago. We've since then had the pandemic, so there may be recommendations from the council that are slightly different than that pro forma, but I think it's really important to have that in there because that was the basis for the bond.
Excellent.
And-
Yeah, very good.
The Ballard King and all of that.
Yeah, the Ballard King report. Yep. And then
So-
we also we've also done some projections just for operating costs because we need to, the building won't be expected to be 100% cost recovery, but there are certain targets of revenue that have been identified and the cost recovery levels that have been identified. And so those will all have to be taken into the fee recommendation that goes to the city council.
Okay,
Excellent. Excellent.
And
Okay.
again, this is a preliminary report, so
Right.
we'll sort it out and get it going. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Rob.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Beverly,
That's-
to your point, I wouldn't mind, I'd like to just hear how you'd like us to align with you on that.
Mhm.
Or-
Yeah, that would be great. And
Okay,
then we've got the previous fee studies we did just 5 years ago, so we can pull those out. And we need to make sure we've got the city's benchmark cities in there.
Okay.
The other thing is you still need someone needs on these commissioners, and it needs to be more than one at separate times, needs to get into the J and get
Right.
their current costs, because they will not share them unless you go in as a prospective member.
Yeah, and also I was going to do that in the early part of the month, but I'm waiting until after their beginning of the year specials.
Oh, yeah, you want to wait a little bit, and then you also want to wait till COVID dies down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they don't say the same fees to everyone who goes in, because they are like a private enterprise, so it would be.
And
good
we
to
are
have more
being
than one
recorded.
person.
I was gonna say I'm the
Yes.
wrong religion.
No,
No.
no, everyone's welcome at the J. Everyone's welcome at the J. There are a lot of people there that are members that are not of the Jewish faith.
Yes.
I don't have
So,
anything else.
okay, so if we've got future, we talk about work plan, master plan, rental use policies, fee study, and we've just talked about that. Would invite anyone to be part of the Weed Warriors on February 12th or March 12th, and then there's also the Olivet and Bloom in April, and then their plant sale toward the end of April. So, are there any other items that people have questions on? Evening? If not, I will ask for if people are interested in adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
I second.
all in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Let the recording show it was unanimous. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.